I'm Erica Lynn, and we all know the ocean is the most demanding environment on Earth, consistently testing the reliability and durability of our equipment. When you spend as much time fishing as I do, you know that reliable gear is essential for staying on the water. This is why I went with the Abyss battery to power my trolling motor, electronics, and outboard. The guys at Abyss Battery are rattling the saltwater industry by manufacturing performance marine batteries specifically designed for sonar, outboards, trolling motors, and electronic fishing reels. They're also Bluetooth compatible, so I found checking battery statuses right on your phone while you're out on the water is a huge game changer. To learn more about why Abyss batteries are used by the pros and factory installed by premier boat builders, visit abyssbattery.com.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together.
All right, I am sitting here and I am talking to Sean Rowe, and also sitting with me is the new co-host of Publicly Challenged, Clay Bowers. Clay, why don't you go ahead and kick it off by asking Sean some questions here.
All right. I'm very excited to be the new co-host here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Sean, you get to be our experiment.
I'm happy to be the guinea pig.
All right. Sean, I've been following you on social media for a while, and your content is awesome. I just really want to know, how did you get into foraging?
Yes. I suppose it would go back to the very first time, that I guess you could say I was introduced to the idea of foraging was back when I was being babysat by this couple. And I was probably maybe 10 or so. And the husband of the woman who I was most familiar with, her husband was like not always home, but when I was babysat, he would be outside with his shirt off. He was super hairy, and he would always be working on stuff. I mean, he is this like complete, like really super dark tan. Always be like working on carpentry, building things in the yard, and I was just kind of fascinated by him. But one time he just came up to me and he's like, he had a dandelion in his hand, a leaf, and he started eating it. And he's like, there's a lot of iron in this. You can eat this, And I just thought that was so weird that he was picking up something out of his yard that wasn't in a garden. It was just there. And he started eating it. And I tried it. I didn't like it at the time, but it was an interesting idea, kind of put a seed in my head, so to speak. And then when I really got the bug was when I was about 18 or so, and I went to the Tom Brown's Wilderness Tracking Survival School. And that's when I started really getting on this path of foraging, became more and more in the foreground of the holistic skill set of a naturalist, survivalist kind of a person, I guess.
Yeah. One thing, can you introduce yourself, Sean, for everybody listening? So just kind of they get an idea of who you are.
Yeah. Who the hell is this guy? My name is Sean Rowe, and you pronounced my last name correctly. I'm very impressed. But yes, I am from upstate New York. I've been there most of my life, and professionally, I'm a musician, touring artist. But foraging has been like I said, in the foreground for a very long time. So yeah, that's me.
All right. All right. And now we know kind of how the foraging got started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what led you to go to the wilderness tracking school? What drove that? What was in you? Was it something you always had?
Yeah, yeah. From I know a lot of people share this. Like, there's a feeling that we grow up, and most of us are not mentored in the ways of living off the land. It's just not in our worldview for most of us in this context of the world we live in today. And I was just like that. I didn't have any mentors when I was growing up. I didn't have any elders who were naturalists. I just kind of came into this on my own. I had a sense about it. Like, I didn't want to just see nature. I didn't want to just like observe it. I didn't just want to go to a museum. It wasn't enough. I needed to be actively participating in it. And so naturally, foraging was a doorway to do that. But from my earliest memories, I always knew there was something more I wanted to do with nature. So that led me to this path, really.
So you were into more than foraging though at the beginning, because Tom Brown's school is a lot about tracking and fire making and that sort of stuff. So obviously you wanted to be immersed in nature and do more than just foraging, but somehow, kind of just like me, foraging has come to the forefront of all that for you.
Yeah, and I think that's not that hard of a stretch, considering that everybody has to eat pretty much every day. You know what I mean? So it's an activity we do regularly. So naturally, I'm just always doing it. You know what I mean? I'm not always building a debris hut, but I'm always eating, or at least, regularly. So it's what really fascinates me. I mean, I'm very interested in, the various like, like what is the appropriate food for humans? We all seem to be confused. At least the mainstream seems to be confused about that, and it's very strange to me why we're animals. How come we don't actually really know? So like I've always been fascinated with that idea, and it's just fun. I just love getting out there and harvesting wild food. As you know, there's so many reasons to do it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Sean, your video today, I saw that maybe it wasn't today, maybe it just came into my feed today, but I saw that you were picking hickory nuts. Was that today? And if you were, what are you doing with your hickory nuts?
Well, that was actually 2 days ago. And I've been scouting, as you know, not every year is a good year for a productive year for hickories, among other trees too. But it hasn't been great for hickory nuts, shagbark hickory specifically, for the last few years. But certain select areas, it has been pretty productive. So with those shagbarks, I usually just will crack as I need them, and I'll just have them just like that, just right out of the shell after they've been cured. But with something like pig nuts, I'll make hickory nut milk, and bitter nuts I haven't had in a while, but I know they can be, they're not great if you just eat them raw, but if you boil them, they're edible. I don't have a lot of bitter nuts around here, but yeah, it's mostly the shagbarks and the pig nuts. I haven't looked at my areas for pig nuts yet, but shagbarks are very exciting when you see those. I mean, they are like a pecan if a pecan was like 10 times as good as a pecan is. You know what I mean? They're just like so potent that they're so worth it to harvest. And it's just bewildering. I don't know if you come across this. I was thinking about this the other day. I was harvesting those hickory nuts, and this isn't the first time it happened, but there's a couple that came up to me and I saw them out of my periphery. I saw them. I know they were going to come, I know I see them walking around and they're looking at me. I'm like, okay, they're going to ask me. They're going to ask me something about what I'm doing. And the guy is like, he does a double take. He doesn't come up to me right away, but he goes to his car in the park. It's near the parking lot is where the hickory nut trees was in this park. And I thought he was going to go away, but then he comes back. He's like, hey, can I ask you something? What are you harvesting here? I'm like, oh, these are shagbark hickories. They're delicious. They're really, really good. And he's like, you can eat those? I was like, oh yeah, you can totally eat them. They're absolutely delicious. It's like, how do you just like crack them? I was like, well, they're probably better if you cure them and wait a little bit, but yeah, they're really easy to harvest and you just they're hard to crack and he's like, wow, that's fascinating. Huh. And then he just walks away. Hardly nobody asks if they could try something or like, that's all, you know what I mean? So I just wonder about that. Like, did they go home and like, is it like that's neat that you do that. And then they never think about it again. It's just I don't know what's happening there, psychologically speaking, but it's interesting. It's not the first time.
Yeah.
I have that happen too. But most of the time, they don't ask, but I think it sparks that curiosity enough to where maybe later on they'll pursue it, but they still have that aversion or that fear that there's some type of poisoning going on. So they want to verify it. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's the fear of poisoning is so, it's so prevalent. It's comical in a lot of ways. What comes to mind is I was on this mushroom workshop once. It was a big one too. It was Gary Linkoff. Is that the way you say his name? Mm-hmm. Who's no longer with us, as you know. But he was the keynote speaker at this. It's like the Northeast Mycological Association, I think. But it was a big gathering, and I was at this, and I was on a mushroom hike as a part of this experience, and there was this prodigy kid there. He must have been like 18, knew every single mushroom we came across, the Latin, everything about it. He was like a Rain Man with mushrooms, And I didn't know near as much as he did with mushrooms, but we talked afterwards, and I introduced myself, and I said, yeah, I do more plants than mushrooms, and then he's like, oh, plants. That scares the hell out of me. I mean, there's so many things that could poison you with plants. I'm like thinking, people say that about mushrooms, you know what I mean? It's just so funny. Like the two camps, they don't always sign up together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking back to what you said a minute ago, though, I wanted to interject and say, I have had people say to me while picking service berries, hey, I say, do you want one of these? You want to try one? And I've literally had people say, no, I'm too full.
Right. I can't do that one berry. I just can't. It's like any other time would have been great, man, but sorry. Yeah.
I tell that to people sometimes when I just straight up don't want it. It's no, thanks. I got to drive.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
So, Sean, where in the country? You said upstate New York. I want to know I want to know specifically because oddly enough, I have family that lives over in Johnstown and Gloversville area.
Oh, Gloversville is very close. I used to play shows in Gloversville, actually.
Yeah, so I've actually been out to the Adirondacks. My mom just moved back over to Michigan here after living over there for 20 years.
Wow.
And but I used to go out there, regularly, like once a summer, and I'd hang out in the Adirondacks, and we'd go up to those weird little lakes, that are up in the small mountains there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I saw leeches the size of like freaking snakes in some of those.
Yeah, the leeches are. I've experienced them. They're unsettling, to say the least. But there's something magical about the Adirondacks, though. I miss it when I'm not around it. I'm very close. I'm very close to the park. I'm right on the edge of the park, actually.
Okay. So, and you do teach foraging classes out there?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna have to tell my sister.
Yeah, please. I didn't know that. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
like I said, my sister lives out there, so I really got to hook her up with you. But how often are you doing those classes? And so, and like,
This,
what sort of subjects do you cover in your classes?
yeah. This is a good question. Yeah. So it varies depending on what time of the year I'm doing it. But generally the subjects are based around my own experience. So it's essentially like the identification, the gathering, and the processing. I think the processing of wild food is not talked about enough.
Hmm.
So I love to focus on that because it gives people a real sense about what's involved. And I kind of get tired of the whole plant walk, the whole like, look at this, you can eat this. And because I feel like that information goes in and out of people's brains very quickly, you know.
I agree.
Um, I think the what I would like to get across is the experience with the plants, even if it's just, even if I just cover a small amount. Um, I think it's that I think that that generates kind of excitement and inspiration when you can really see what's involved. You get your hands dirty, literally.
Hmm.
So yeah, I focus a lot on that when I can, when I have enough time. Um, and this coming uh, next 2024, I'll be doing a lot more workshops. It just so happens that I'm on tour a lot too, so I have to balance that out with the workshop then.
Yeah, I think like when somebody handles something and they get that tactile senses going and they experience it more so than just somebody pointing something out to them and not wanting to disturb it, people tend to retain a lot more information. If I can hold it and
Absolutely.
feel it and know what it looks like and feels like in
Yeah,
my hands, that connection that you build, I mean, it almost taps into something that's ancestral that we don't really recognize, and it helps. It definitely helps. So when you talk
it
about
helps. It's
processing,
and
yeah,
it's I think it's like the thing. You know what I mean? It is like it's why those apps like plant apps, they're only going to go so far. You can't replace experience.
Hmm.
You can't give somebody experience through an application. you know um so if people want the fast answer, they want everything like really quickly. They want shortcuts and all that, and there's really no shortcut to experience. But the good thing is that the experience is awesome. I mean, it feels good. So
yeah.
that's what I'd like to get across.
I'm definitely not at that level. Obviously, I'm not at the same level as you and Clay. I would say I'm more of a novice, maybe at some things intermediary,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it seems to me that people rely on those apps so much, and to me, I would rather go out and experience it or have to retain that information and take it home with me so I can identify it versus clicking on it and getting that instant gratification. And when I do that, it seems that I retain so much more and actually learn that plant because it's not just, oh, let's click, here's my phone, let's take that phone over here and just keep looking at things. And there's some things that when I absolutely can't figure them out, I'll take a picture of it with that app and then it comes up with 20 different things and it makes it even more confusing because now you don't know what it is. And,
Yeah,
and
and you definitely you can't rely on those things if
yeah,
you're going to eat the plant. It's not a good idea.
if I'm like 99% sure and I want to verify and Clay's not around to text him a picture or something, that's what I do is I'll take a picture of it with the app and I'm like, "Oh, I thought so. I am right." You know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
about all I use them for.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I actually did a whole like YouTube video on this app that I do use for uh for like a tentative identification on plants occasionally. And I took it down. I took the post down because it was like about 30-minute video, and halfway through, I'm then going into why this app is not a good idea to to rely on. So I had two opposing ideas. One is like, I want to get somebody's attention. So naturally, I'll use the app idea because everybody wants to use an app, But then I'll say, halfway through it, but what you really want to do is like have experience with this play. So I'm like, that's stupid. Just no, that's not good. So I took that down and I was like, no, this is not the way to do it. So yeah, I am fully aware. It's like these technologies can be helpful, but they're not. You can't lean on them. Again, for experience.
I noticed, Sean, that like a lot of new foragers, and speaking as somebody who's been foraging for 17 years now myself, I don't know how long. Sounds like you've been doing it for a very long time. But it does seem like this whole new wave of foragers does seem to be pretty like reliant on technologies, and a lot of that plant snap apps and less experience. That experience that you speak of is very important, in my opinion, for just being able to grab that plant and feel it and know it, and you you recognize it rather than like identifying it. It's like you see a friend and you recognize him in public. You can tell by the way he walks.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot because I just feel like our brains, that's the way they work. They work on this pattern recognition thing. And you don't have to, I think maybe people get the wrong idea that this is so much work always. It's just, it's work in the beginning because you're learning your ABCs and you got to really like go through all the things it could be and what it's possibly not, and to compare and contrast. But I like what Sam Thayer says about that. He says like there are no like lookalikes, there are look similars. You know what I mean? And to get to the look similar, you have to have experience, because then you realize, oh yeah, this can't be. I mean, look at the thing. That's this. You know what I mean? It ain't anything else. But in the very beginning, it looks like a lot of things. So there's a misconception and also a tendency that you want to really be right and you want to be right fast. So there's a little bit of a danger there to be careful of in the beginning.
So are you into doing any sort of hunting, or is it just foraging for you?
No, I am open to it. In fact, I have a friend who's a hunter, mostly deer hunts, but he's great, and he's every year I'm like, this is the year I'm going to get into it, and I just something happens and I have to take a step back, but I really do. I value it. I believe in it. And there is nothing like, getting fresh venison. I've eaten many roadkills, that I've harvested, but I haven't harvested my own deer, but I really hope to someday, and also to other animals too. But yeah. To answer your question, absolutely yes.
So, I mean, during your time at the wilderness school or Tom Brown's courses and stuff, wasn't there? I mean, there had to have been some type of trapping or survival. Squirrel sticks and stuff.
When I went on a survival quest, I was out for 24 days, and I wanted it to be 40, but I got real hungry. I had some skills. I mean, I was living at the survival school for a year, and I was learning with some really top people, but nothing really prepared me to live completely out in the woods for that amount of time. Like a bunch of things happened that I wasn't prepared for, but I was making primitive traps and I was setting those out, and having to do everything yourself, building your shelter and fire, and I just wasn't taking in enough calories. I was eating what I could find, and mostly in my traps I wanted to get squirrels, but I was getting a lot of mice. so I
Ooh.
ate the mice. And
Yeah.
I remember remember this funny moment of like when I get a mouse. Also, and my mom was like, "Oh, bubonic plague, black plague." So I'm like, I'm trying to like hold the mice with like these wooden tongs, like way away from me. I'm like, I got this mouse. I'm going to cook it, but I don't want it near me. I don't want to get these fleas on me. So yeah, I mean, trapping was something that I did, and I think that's an amazing skill. Actually, primitive trapping
Mhm.
is actually a really really interesting, fascinating skill. And if you think about it, I mean, you're hunting without even being there.
So I want to
So
touch on this, but first I got to talk about it. Clay wishes he could trap everything because
Yeah.
he says he's such a
Yeah.
terrible hunter that he wishes he could just trap everything, including fish, all kinds
Yeah.
of animals, everything, right?
yeah,
Including parsnips. But
Yeah.
parsnips. Yeah.
No, that was my April Fool's joke. This
Oh, okay.
I made the video this year. It was a trapping parsnips video, and actually I did it so deadpan
That's
that
funny. I didn't see that.
I think nobody got it.
I got
That's
it.
funny,
I just
man.
chose
I gotta
to.
see that. Is that up on your site still?
That's on my Instagram and my
Okay.
YouTube. Yeah.
I saw this one thing that I was laughing out loud, man. It was you did this is a while back, but it was like a post in like a new forager, and you'd like pick something up and you're like, yeah, this is it. This is good. This is good. And it's like totally no discerning like what part you're gathering, or the the shape that it's in, the condition that it's in. Yeah, this is it. This is it. So let's pick it up. Yeah. That was funny, man. That was like
That was me
very real.
throwing everything into a garbage bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Another thing that I think is funny is like the Jeff Foxworthy. You might be a new forager if people send me pictures all the time. Like, what is this?
Mhm.
One picture, blurry,
Yeah.
of the top of a mushroom. I don't know, man. Is this or another one? Like, is this nettle again? Like one picture, it's blurry. It's super grainy. I think so. Maybe.
Slap it on yourself and see what it does.
Yeah. You got to take more pictures. You got to take more pictures, and you got to take, multiple angles.
I tell that all the time. I get pictures from friends, and they're like, "Hey, what's this mushroom?" I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe zoom out a little bit, or zoom in a little bit."
When I know, I'm even reluctant to say.
Yeah.
I just feel like, ooh, what if that's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I do know, but I ain't gonna tell you. You gotta.
Most of the time, I tell people, if you don't know what it is, pick it anyway. Pick it anyway. Put it in your pack. Take it home with you.
Yeah,
and then,
right.
Google how to do a spore print, and then take a bunch of photos of it, or take a bunch of photos before you throw it in your pack. And then, so my buddy finally, and this is one of my friends that does a lot of hunting, and he just moved to Idaho, and so he's out there all the time, and he keeps sending me all these pictures, and I'm like, you need to get some books. There's one that's like this big. It's one of the greatest books ever made about mushrooms. I said, take the dichotomous key and look at it as you're going, and just use it.
Yeah.
And finally, I think after one of his last posts, he's like, yep, I'm going to buy that book. Luke tells me all the time, I've got to do it. And it's like, do it, man. The only way you're truly going to learn is, forcing yourself to learn it.
Yeah. Dichotomous keys are it's an interesting thing, because they really do teach you a lot. But they are very intimidating. Because especially when you're starting out, you're like, every other word is something you have to look up. Like,
Right.
Jesus Christ, man.
What's a gill?
Yeah. And then, one thing that's very frustrating is like, like you take it like a winter guide, like a winter dichotomous key. I found this to be kind of frustrating. Is like they don't always agree on what is what. Like if you're looking for like a terminal bud on a twig, and you can have like a false terminal bud too, where it looks like this is it's a pseudo terminal bud. It's not really a terminal bud, but they don't not all keys agree on what signifies that. Some of them are different. So it's like there's a few things where you might be misled, and then you have to backtrack in the dichotomous key, and you could do that, but you do learn a lot. So I think they're really valuable. Honestly, they really do teach you a lot. And if you're diligent and if you actually look up the terms, it can be really helpful too, So I think that's something, though, I wouldn't put that first, as in like, that's not very inspiring to get into foraging.
No, it's not.
Give somebody a dichotomous key. It's like, go ahead, go do it. No, you gotta get them in it.
And that sounds terrible.
Yeah, very unfun.
No, but I mean, it does. Even just by the process of elimination, you learn about so many other mushrooms in the process. Like a parasol or what you think is a parasol, and it turns out it's a green leopoda or whatever.
Yeah,
it's all there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, Luke, are you more interested, because this is a thing that I noticed, and maybe Sean, you also noticed this. It seems like hunters are more drawn to mushrooms. And then plant people like me and you, Sean, like I heard you say it earlier, and I say the same thing. Like I'm far more into plants than I am into mushrooms.
I like it all. Like for me, I like it all. What fascinates me though is obviously during hunting season and where I live, we have hen of the woods, maitake mushrooms. So no matter what, in October and sometimes even into November, I know I'm going to come home with something on top of chicken of the woods and all these other things. And even as the plants start to die off, there's still, all these other things that are still there. I mean, not that the plants are all died off, because actually I discovered spicebush by accident. And I remember texting you and I'm like, hey, I think I found spicebush randomly. I shot a deer. I was tracking a deer, and out of nervousness, I have this tendency, and I just touch plants and like take them and touch them and feel them as I'm walking along. And I happen to grab a leaf and a berry off of one, and I'm rubbing the leaf and the berry, and all of a sudden I'm like, that smells really good. It's lucrative smell. It's drawing me into it, and I'm holding it up to my nose and just wanting to put it in my mouth and taste it. And then I texted you, and I'm like, I think I found spicebush. I don't know. And you're like, does it smell amazeballs? That was your response to
me. Yeah. It is so interesting, especially when you get the berries. I love the leaves. I mean, they're very citrusy, but the berries are like, they're something else. Yeah.
It's like allspice and clovey kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just
clove's good.
It really drew to me, and I was like, okay, this has got to be something that. So I find it funny that while I'm out there, I immerse myself with all these other things to occupy myself. I have an ADD brain, but in the wilderness, I feel like that ADD brain is actually supposed to be there. Those distractions, because I could be focused on a plant, and all of a sudden I hear something and my head turns, and I'm like, oh, what was that? Oh, hey, look, there's a deer. Oh, what was that? Oh, hey, there's a squirrel. And I think that's how we're actually wired. We've kind of gotten away from that predispositioned instinct to do those things over time. Yeah. But I tend to do that. And so Clay thinks I'm always more into mushrooms than whatever, but I think it's because mushrooms are easier to spot than certain plants to be able to get down and identify them. Like I can go, oh yeah, that's this or that or whatever. But if it's something I don't really know yet, I'm not going to take my binoculars and go down and look at it. I'm going to have to go down there and touch it and feel it and look at it. Versus a mushroom, I can go like this and start dialing it in while I'm in the tree and be like, I thought I saw orange over there. It is chicken of the woods. I'm going to get down later and I'm going to go get those. And I've done that.
Yeah. This is very unscientific to say this, but I just had this thought of like, when you're hunting, you're mostly in like wooded areas,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily out in the open or on the edges of trails and stuff. And that's where you see like a lot of the wild edibles are found in those areas. So I'm just wondering if like just by nature of your surroundings, you're seeing more mushrooms than possibly edible plants within the forest
Yeah,
setting.
a lot of times I
You
hunt
know what I mean?
edges. So those
Yeah, you
edges,
do. Okay.
you don't really have, you're kind of on the edge of those transitions. So it's not like
I
there's a
gotcha.
bunch
Yeah.
of flora. It'll be, unfortunately a lot of honeysuckle, and then it'll open up to big wide open oak bottoms or whatever. I love hunting oak
Yeah.
bottoms.
Okay.
Great spot,
Gotcha.
especially right now when the acorns are dropping. It's
Oh, yeah.
magical.
Speaking of that, has it been a really good year for acorns where you guys are?
Yeah, today,
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. In fact,
Crazy. Yeah.
last year we did not have any acorns at all, and this year there's so many that it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like that here too. Bumper crop
that's
for sure. And it's been a
walnuts,
while.
acorns, hickory nuts.
Yep.
All
Totally.
of them this year. Last year, I was starting to read into conspiracy theories because I just couldn't believe the lack of all nuts last year.
I know. Last year was the first year where usually with like black walnuts, I don't have to think about it. They're gonna be fairly decent every year, usually.
Mhm.
Last year was the first year where like I found a couple good trees and almost all of them were bad nuts. They were all
Wow.
almost all duds. And it wasn't like any other year. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I've never had that experience. Black walnuts, I've harvested them for almost like at least like 16 years. But total bumper crop for everything, like all nut trees. It's except for butternuts. I haven't seen a lot of those this year, but I was wondering what you thought about this, Clay. If you have any thoughts about, okay, so I was in the Midwest at that foraging festival at the Midwest Wild Harvest Fest, and hackberry is something that I like to get when it's around. We don't have it as much as I notice it in the Midwest, but every single tree, and I went from like state to state in the Midwest, like traveling through, none of them had berry. None of them had any fruit on them. And I'm just wondering, like, are they like talking to each other? Are they, like, what is it that it's like all of them have no fruit? You know what I mean? What do you think is happening there?
Well, for certain like oaks and back to your black walnuts, I do think there's some sort of communication going on with those trees, and I think that they will practice that predator swamping,
Yeah.
which is to completely hold off, not produce any nuts for
Yep.
an entire season,
Yep.
and then in the next year you just absolutely dump, and I think that that's what's happening right now, and for sure, you're talking hackberries. I actually have zero experience with hackberries because I live in northern Michigan.
Okay. Not
And
up
no, and we do not have. So basically, based on our geology, it's too sandy. So many things that exist in southern Michigan or maybe even in New York don't exist where I live because of our sand.
there. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So like,
I've got quite a few hackberries in my yard, and they do have fruit. I've noticed it's not as much as it was like last year, which was weird. No other nuts, hackberries, fruit all over them last year, and then this year it's pretty scarce. I mean, there's still some on there. I plan on going to pick some and make some hackberry milk. But
Did you ever have the Yule Gibbons candy bar? The
no, tell me more.
Shagbark hickory, and hackberry just ground up together in a mortar.
wow.
And it's
Shell and all, or
you gotta remove the shell, but I'm telling you, dude, it's scary good. It's crazy. They can market it as a legitimate candy bar. Crazy.
I love the taste.
No,
Sorry.
On average, it takes about 30 days for a person to break their New Year's resolution. So if saving money was on your 2024 list, your odds aren't really looking that great. Luckily, I have a 100% guaranteed way to save you money this year. Just switch to Mint Mobile right now. Mint Mobile has wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for $15 a month. If you save as much as I think you're going to, you are going to be able to afford a brand new rod and reel. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get your new wireless plan for $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That's mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
You want to succeed, you want to fish, you want to be one of the greatest.
Tune in to West Marine's Life on the Water, presented by Costa Custom Boats, every Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV.
I was just gonna say, Sean, do you eat the pits of the hackberries?
I do, but sometimes it's like, for whatever reason, certain trees are really hard, and it's like, did I just break my teeth? You know what I mean? But they're pleasant. They're really good. They're just like, some of them are harder than others, I found.
Okay.
I don't ever eat them unless it's a food processor.
Yeah. I've also ground them up in a Vitamix too, for like a sort of like a sugar substitute. But they're fun to eat. They're just like, I would think it would be really impractical to not eat the seed too, because it's hard to. It's not like a fruit where it's like you can swirl it in your mouth and you can spit out the seeds. Kind of not like that. You gotta chew it. You know.
Yeah.
It's almost like eating the coffee fruit. There's hardly any actual fruit around it.
Yeah,
it's almost
exactly,
all seed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Luke, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I love the taste of them, but I don't ever eat the seeds until it's blended up. But there's one thing that's eating at me, Sean. How did you cook these mice? I mean,
let me tell you something. It wasn't. I wouldn't have gotten any Michelin stars. That's for sure. I definitely wanted to thoroughly cook them. So I'd basically just take the whole mice and, the whole mouse, or should I say, sometimes I did get mice, plural, and if I had a lucky day, but I would just singe the hair off over the fire, and then I would just cook it right on the coals. And I actually noticed, the meat itself was not bad. In fact, I preferred it to the chipmunks I was getting. I did not like chipmunks. But I ate everything except for the stomach. I tried it, and it was like you would think it would taste. So bad.
So
you ate the teeth.
You ate the entrails, though? I mean, would you
I ate
squeeze them out and evacuate them? Or?
Yeah, I just didn't eat the stomach, but I ate everything else. Everything else sort of just like, you think about a mouse. You're talking, how much of a meal can you get? But, by the way, this is kind of cool for people, to think about this. But when I was out there, this particular spot, I was in the Catskill Mountains, and there was a lot of bitternut hickories there, and they were falling. And it's probably the reason that a lot of my traps were not being set, because all these bitternut hickories were falling, and the squirrels were getting these things. And I was trying to make some enticing little baits that they would take, but they were eating all these bitternuts. And at the time I was like, can't eat bitternuts. They taste like shit. They're awful. And then I took my first class that I ever took, workshop, with Sam Thayer after that, like 2008, I think. And he was like, you can actually eat bitternuts. You just gotta boil them, because they have tannic acid, but unlike acorns, that's like in the kernel. It's actually just on the surface of the nut because it's in the shell. It's not inside the nut with bitter nuts. So I sampled some at his house, and he just boiled them up, and it was quick. It wasn't like boiling acorns where you got to do it for hours, or long periods of time. It was very quick, and they were just okay. They were pleasant. It was not like shag bark and freeze, but they were okay. But I would not have lost the weight I did lose on that survival trip had I known that, because there were so many bitter nuts to gather, and I could have just boiled them and ate that, and that would have supplemented my mice.
Yeah.
Right. Very well.
How much weight did you lose?
I lost 18 pounds in 24 days.
Whoa.
That's a significant amount.
Yeah. I mean, they say you're burning 7,000 calories a day. I was eating whatever I could find, which was a lot of plants and some rodents, but it wasn't near as much as I needed, considering how much calories I was expending.
So
God,
how long ago was this experience?
That was in 2007.
2007. Okay.
Yep. It was the end of, that was in September.
were you on a journey? Was it nomadic, or was it just kind of like a base camp setup?
It was like a base camp setup. I was living at the survival school, and then they were on 200 acres of forest and wetland. And so I walked basically a 20-minute walk out into the forest there, and I set up camp. So I had prior knowledge. I had prior knowledge of what the area looked like and what would be there, so it wasn't totally, I wasn't going blind into it.
Hmm. And if you could do it today, do you think that you would lose so much weight?
No, because I would eat those hickory nuts. I would probably still lose weight. But I think, I certainly know more than I did back then. One of the best meals I had out there was yellow-footed chanterelles and crayfish.
And crayfish.
Yeah, from the pond. That was close to there. That was super fun. That was a great meal. And there was also freshwater clams there too in the creek. And I didn't know enough then to leave them in water overnight. You know how that.
Yeah.
What an unpleasant eating experience, because they taste so good, but then you get the sand, and it's like, oh man, I want to enjoy this because it's so good, but I couldn't.
Sean, that's so funny that you also did that, because when my son was about 3 or 4 years old, I want to say, we were up in the Upper Peninsula, and we're not allowed to harvest them, but I'm in this really remote area, and I see freshwater clams literally everywhere. We were out in a rowboat, and we're in like 4 or 5 feet of water, and I'm like looking at freshwater clams all over the ground. And I go, oh, well, if I could just take like a couple and cook them up. And I did the exact same thing. Didn't flush them out, any of that stuff. Me and my kids, popping them in our mouth and just biting down on a mouthful of sand.
Oh God! Oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard. I can't. It's hard to think about. Yeah. Very unfortunate. All right, I feel less bad that happened.
Yeah, you'll
glad
never
I can
do
also.
it again. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Luke, have you ever ate freshwater clam?
I have, but I did not prepare them. But I did know. And the same thing with the crayfish too. I mean, you let them sit and clear themselves out too.
Yeah.
I used to read a lot of survival books when I was a kid, Clay. So I knew all that though.
Okay. What other stuff did you eat when you were out there, Sean?
Cattails. Roasted, a lot of roasted cattail roots. Rhizomes. A lot of nannyberry was out at the time, and that's one of those things, man. it's like black licorice. Some people like they taste it and it's like, wow, this is so weird. I think they're amazing. I love nannyberries. So those were out. There was I ate grubs like in they weren't bad actually. They weren't amazing, but they weren't bad. They were.
Did you sing Hakuna Matata?
I didn't want to say it, but yeah. What else? Let's see. Yeah, it was September, so I forget what. I don't know if I had that many greens. Parsnips, wild parsnips for sure. I had those, which I liked, but when you don't have salt, things start to turn your stomach pretty quick. You know, that I think that if you had salt, that would be such a game changer. You know?
Or a good fat or some acid.
Yeah, right. You don't have all the amenities that you would like. A little bit of condiments would go a long way. But I guess too, there's some things that I would probably have had like now would be something like autumn olive. If I had known that then, I would have probably partaken in that. Although when I was out, they would probably been, maybe some of them would have been ripe, but they might have also been pretty astringent at that point when I was out. Speaking of which, do you get them in where you are, autumn olive?
Yep.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, we have. I actually think that we have the best autumn olive in the world.
Okay.
I've been all over the place, and I've never seen autumn olives produce as good as they produce in northern Michigan.
Wow.
And I actually say that confidently, that I think that because they are a nitrogen fixing plant, my theory is that our soil is so crappy here that they have some sort of incentive to produce a heavier crop of seeds because they realize that soil is good for exploitation and like so that they can improve the soil.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow.
And I only think that because so I every single year, like you were saying, like you thought black walnuts would produce good every year, and last year it wasn't so good. There has never been a year that I have seen since I've known about autumn olives. There's never been a year when I haven't seen bushes that were so laden that they're like hitting the ground.
That's amazing. Yeah. Like this year, I just got a few gallons the other day, and I processed some tonight. Autumn, it's one of those fruits that is so weird, like when you're processing it, because it just does some weird shit. Like the way that the juice separates from the pulp is so strange. And also, like I've been noticing, I have like one of those fruit strainers, the manual like hand crank ones.
Yep.
With a hopper on top. And what I notice is that when you put it through the first time, you get a lot of juice, a little bit less pulp. But the second time, when you run it through once and you put the seeds back in, I really like that. That second pressing, for whatever reason, gets really, really silky and is less astringent. I don't know why that is, but it's like it almost would probably have a different application, I think, than the first pressing of it. But it's just such a weird thing to work with. It's just so amazing. I love it. But speaks to another thing. It's like a lot of this stuff is so unique unto itself that you can't really compare it to anything else that we have like in the stores.
Yep. Luke, do you have autumn olives by you?
We do. My problem is by the time like a frost hits them to where they actually taste good, the birds have all picked them away.
I know.
So I never get enough.
I can't. I don't know if this is like if I can base this in science, but I feel like when I've frozen them and thawed them and frozen them again, it reduces the astringency of them. I'd have to like really repeat the experiment maybe more times than I have to really get the sense for if this is like empirical, but it seemed to work. In other words, like if you're getting them when it's not like totally optimal, when they would be less astringent if you had waited, but you're saying like because the birds do get them, then maybe that would be something to try. But isn't it funny? Like I do notice this with other trees too, with other fruit trees. I'll be looking at this shrub or tree that is loaded with berries, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. But then I think, oh, wait a minute. I go to taste it, and it tastes like shit. I'm like, oh, not even the birds like this. That's why they're here. That's why they've left them.
Last time I was out hunting, I found 4 autumn olive bushes, and I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And I went and picked berries from each tree, tasted them. I'm like, these are terrible. And I thought to myself, maybe in a few days or in a week, I'll come back, and I'll get them. And it must have turned within a couple of days, and we did have a cold snap. And right after that cold snap, I went back, and they were gone. The bush was decimated.
Yeah.
There wasn't a berry left on it. And I was like, oh, well, all right. They must have turned.
Yeah.
I seem to have the opposite up where we are. I've picked autumn olives all the way up until December 15th.
That's amazing. I can't believe that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even bother even looking at autumn olives usually until like October 15th, somewhere around there. Like, so I just think it's funny that like everybody else in the country is like has this same thing that you guys are talking about, and then by me, I'm like, I'm not even gonna pay attention until it's like the weather starts getting in the 30s.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah.
I wonder why that would be. Maybe like more birds migrate down towards you guys, or I don't know where you're at in New York.
The migration has already started.
Well, I am.
So.
Yeah. I'm where I am. Like locally, I'm very close to sea level. I'm right along the Hudson River.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, Clay's
really
on the glacial sandhills up there, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe.
What's funny though is Sam Thayer's second book, Nature's Garden.
Yeah.
That's got his chapter about autumn olives in there, and I'm pretty positive that those autumn olives were picked and all those pictures were taken right by me because Sam has family that lives like 20 minutes from my house.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, so he knows the autumn olives are amazing where I live.
Yep. Yep. And I don't know if like you run into this there, but like when I was picking them the other day, it's not the first time this has happened, but when they're so loaded, it's just a pleasure it's one of the most efficient fruit trees to harvest anything from. I mean, it's so easy, right?
Yeah.
But some of those have crazy thorns on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they just like out of nowhere. It's not uniform, they're just like once in a while you get thorned, and they're not like little prickles, like really serious thorns. I got stabbed a few times, like impaled. But I don't know if they're younger and that's why the thorns are on there. But price of admission.
You gotta stay away from those burnt sienna colored stems.
Is that what it is?
yeah, because you get the I noticed that too. So the young ones, they'll have more thorns on them, and then the color changes when they're young growth to old growth. So autumn olives that are older are going to be more gray stemmed, and then the younger growth is going to be more brown. Yep.
Well, see, I feel like you can be more discerning because you have them all over the place and everywhere. If I have like just a few shrubs that are loaded, I'm like, I'm taking everything. Okay.
We've got autumn olives that I haven't even seen produce, but I know they're autumn olives. Like they just do not produce. It's been 3 years, and I have.
We got that too.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yep.
Yeah, I see that in southern Michigan all the time when I'm down there. I see autumn olives, like whole entire fields of autumn olives that don't have
fruit.
Yeah, nary a berry.
Wow. Wow. Must be that the soil is so good there that they don't need any help. They're like, we're autumn olive. We just want to live here. We don't need to, we don't have the extra energy to produce fruit. We just want to hang out, right? The soil's fine. You guys are doing fine under there. We don't need to do anything for you.
Yeah. So, Sean, what's next in your life? You're doing the music thing. What kind of music are you playing?
I am a solo performer, and genre is typically in the Americana kind of a vibe. But I've always been solo for, I'd say always, but for many, many years. So kind of like a one-man show, perform solo, although there's other people playing on my records. But, every few years I put out a record, tour on it, and forage along the way.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yep. It is nice being on the road, like, especially if I'm in a different area that these plants are like coming into season at different times. I might catch 2 windows of the same plant being like on the road and then coming back home to get it.
Oh, cool. So, but as far as foraging goes, so you got your YouTube channel. You got two videos up right now. What's the plan for that going forward?
So the plan is that I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter for the Can I Eat This show, and I'm hoping with that'll be successful enough to just cover the production of a new season. So I'd like to do a new season for next year, but it would really depend on getting some funds to do that. Because as you know, it's like it's no easy feat to put a whole show together.
No.
So many things to think about, that you sort of, figure out in real time sometimes, but it all requires money.
Yeah. I think the editing is the most expensive part. I'm sitting on so much raw footage, it's ridiculous, but getting somebody to piece it all together and make it a masterpiece.
Editing is the key. It is the key. I've thought it has been the key for so long that I forced myself to get into it myself so that I didn't have to rely so much on somebody else to do it, because it's really everything. You can have all the best footage you can have, but if you can't put it together in the right way, it's not going to land. It's not going to be interesting, so yeah, it's definitely.
As I told you a few weeks ago when we talked on the phone, I think your videos are edited so amazingly. Like excellent skills at editing. They're wonderful. The filmography, everything is so good. And I really do hope that you can produce more of that because it's really good content.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I have a very small film crew, and those guys do amazing. And I'm more of like in terms of the editing, I make the main chops, and all the like the storyline and everything else, and I don't know all the technical bells and whistles to add. You know what I mean? In the final analysis, it's a group effort, but yeah, it does make a difference because you have like a vision that you want to tell a certain story, right? So it's good to know to have the skill to be able to tell that story in the way that you want to, or at least to dictate how to tell that story to somebody else who can do it.
I like it because it's like an episode of like Foraging the 50 or Wild Fed meets Daryl's House. to where
Yeah.
you know how it ties it all together with the food, and at the end is the music, and you jam out and then talk about it, and that's pretty cool. I like that. I like that touch of it because it personifies you and really shows what you're about too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and the goal was to have it be informative but also entertaining, because let's be honest, that's how you get drawn into things. If you're entertained by it, you tend to retain the information better, and you can also keep your attention, hopefully.
Yeah, that's super cool. I don't know how much more time we have, Luke, but maybe we could ask you for your how do people get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm.
If they want to take one of your classes next year, if they want to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, SeanRowe.net is the hub to all my stuff. So that's with the music, that's with the foraging, and people can go there. I mean, I have Instagram channel, which I post stuff on, and the YouTube channel too, but that everything is basically an offshoot from the main website.
And do you have that Kickstarter lined up to where if somebody listens to this and they get interested?
Not yet.
Okay.
Nope. I haven't launched it yet.
If you do so, it'll be under your socials and stuff like that where they can find it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
So, Sean, anything further that you would like to say? Do you think we missed anything? Would you want to just say once a blurb about how much you love wild food or whatever?
Maybe leave us with a song.
I do want to ask you about May apples. Do you guys have? Do you have them?
I don't.
Yeah, we do.
You don't have May apples?
I've only found a few this year, but that were actually ripe, and then but they're wonderful. They taste honestly like a citrusy, like a Starburst, like a candy.
Yeah.
Mm.
They are something else. They're like, I mean, when you rarely find a lot of them, and when you do, you clear your schedule. You ain't doing anything else. You know what I mean?
I didn't know I could eat them. I always heard that they were toxic. Nobody told me, hey, right? Hey, but there's a caveat there. But when they're fully ripened, you can eat them. Nobody ever told me that part. So for the longest time, there'd be times where I'd be scouting for deer hunting and just wading through them, knocking them off, right? And had no idea that I could be eating them. And I could have filled a backpack at times. It's just,
oh my God.
I found bottoms, like river bottoms, that were just full of them. I mean, just wading through the star-shaped leaves that they have, like just amazing. I had no idea whatsoever.
That's unreal. Wow. I've had one. I was recording an album in Memphis, Tennessee, and all I did, I was there for about 15 days recording this record, and I didn't know Memphis. It was the first time I was ever there. There was this park that was not far from the studio, which is where Elvis played for the first time in public, apparently. And the park had like these woods. I was going to see the park to see where Elvis performed for the first time. I noticed this patch of woods that was like, where the park benches were on the edge, there was woods. And so naturally I gravitated towards that. I was like, oh, see what's in there. And it was just the right time. May apples.
Wow.
Whoa, there's a lot. I was like, I forgot about the whole recording thing. I was just harvesting May apples for hours, and there was so many of them. I had no thought as to, I'm in Memphis. I'm not even prepared to, what am I going to do? Take these on the plane with me? I don't know none of that. I just like, I'm harvesting these May apples. Don't talk to me, So I'm like, oh my God, they're like just the right ripeness and all that. So I get them to my Airbnb, and I have them on the shelf, and I'm just staring at them and smelling them, and I just can't believe I have this many May apples. It's unbelievable. And I went into the studio the next day, and the engineer there. It was just me and him. And I told him about the story. He's like, "Oh, that's interesting. You can eat that." And then I'm like scratching myself. He's like, "You all right?" I'm like, yeah, fine. And it turns out like I had poison ivy all over me. I wasn't paying attention to anything, and he's like looking at me like, can I get that from you? Like, am I gonna get poison ivy? Like, I don't think so, man. I think you're okay. I'm like, but look at these May apples. So I processed them in the Airbnb. I made like jam. I made pulp. I just took it home with me, and it's just I'm obsessed with it. But it's like so elusive too. It's like that's part of the allure, right? So that you almost can never find them, but when you do, it's pretty amazing.
I've never done anything but eat them fresh, so that's
well.
They
cool. I mean, jam is like a kind of a cliche. I feel like to make with wild fruit, but I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But I just like making pulp with them. Like I do this with a lot of fruit. Just make a lot of pulp. I freeze it, and then I can use it however I want to in smoothies or whatever. It's just a practical way to process fruit. But only if you can get a lot of them. It's rare, but it's good.
So you know how Podophyllum peltatum. That's the the scientific name there. Yeah. That plant is like it goes by runners, and I've seen immense patches of it, and I know that like you can see a huge patch, and it's all could be just one plant, right? Well, I knew that in my mind, and then a couple of years ago, I had one of my gardening clients planted a mayapple on her property, but she only planted one, so it never makes any fruit because because it's like a big cluster now, but it's only one specimen.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so like I actually got excited a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Oh, cool, mayapple! Maybe I'll have some fruit up here," because I tend her gardens around her house. And no, it flowers, but it never makes fruit because it's just one plant, even though there's many individual stems,
Wow.
Yeah,
that is a slap in the face.
Yeah, I've never had the fruit.
We'll have to bring you up one more so you can get another plant, a pollinator.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yep.
Well, Sean, before we go, just one more time, if you could just kind of tell people where they can find you. You said social media, but what is it under and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So social media is Sean Rowe 11. I'm older than that. I don't know why he's the 11, but that's my Instagram, and then of course there's Facebook and all that too. Sean Rowe Music, I think, is Facebook. YouTube is Sean Rowe Music too. But I also have a Can I Eat This YouTube page, as if I had more time than I actually have to do a second YouTube page. But SeanRowe.net is really the main hub to go to. That's got everything on it.
Well, Clay, thank you for hosting and co-hosting here. It's awesome, and we're gonna see a lot. Listeners are gonna hear a lot more of you. And Sean, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Glad to do it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on too. And I just want to say one more thing. I think that you're a phenomenal teacher from what I've seen of you. And I think that you should definitely get out there and do more classes. And I'm going to try to get my sister to go to one of your classes.
I would love that. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, Clay.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take care.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.